say good morning, everyone, and welcome to Real Talk Gen X, Y, and Race in America, a virtual conversation between young women of color as they navigate through the emotional impact of systemic racism following the racial injustices that we've seen over the last year. This discussion is presented by Shades Magazine, celebrating all women of color, an online publication and information resource site sponsored by Exceptional Women in Publishing, also known as EWIP. My name is Michelle FITZHUGH-CRAIG, and I am the president of the EWIP Board of Directors and the publisher founder of Shades Magazine. Before we get started, I'd like to get some housekeeping matters out of the way. Our producers have muted your mic. However, if it is not, please be sure to mute your microphone now. For those new to Zoom, you can find the tools bar at the top of your screen or hovering your mouse along the bottom. There, you can find the chat room and other tools you may need or want during today's talk. If you have comments or questions for today's guest, you may place them in the chat and they will be read by me. Please be sure to include your name and city. And you can also ask to be anonymous. You just want to throw a question out there. And I want to add there that if you also want to join the discussion, just shoot a note, put in the chat if you'd like to hop on and, take part. Please feel free to disable your video if you so choose. We also have a lot of viewpoints that will be shared today. A reminder to be respectful of all guests and participants. It is important to note Shades Magazine and its fiscal sponsor, Exceptional Women in Publishing, is a non-political, nonpartisan organization, and as an entity does not support or endorse any political candidates or campaigns. The opinions, viewpoints, and or personal endorsements expressed in any published print, audio, or video content are those of the individual only and do not necessarily represent the views of Shades Magazine or Women in Periodical Publishing, which is EWIP. We are recording today's session for viewing on the Shades website and on our YouTube channel next week. So, before we get started and introduce our panelists for today, I wanted to take a moment, or a few moments actually. We've had a lot going on this past week, and Shades Magazine and EWIP stand with the AAPI community, the Asian American community, and all Asians everywhere. And I guess decry all that is happening, the violence, the just the hate that has been going on this past week and beyond, really the last year. And I wanted to read something that is not only good for this community to remember, but for all, is when we go through things and we need to pull together as one. Dear AAPI family, as you hear the news of the attacks in Atlanta, please sit down. Please give your weary soul time to breathe and catch up. Please turn off your phones and turn inward toward those you love. Please grieve, cry, wail, and exhale. Give your body the space to acknowledge the pain that you have been carrying for so long. At this time, I wanted to go on and introduce one of our panelists who is new to the Real Talk crew, and she wanted to share a little bit. We had talked about what's been going on, and anything she wanted to share. Her name is Leslie Truong. I'm sorry, is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Program Manager for Stanford Children's Health, and she is a volunteer youth basketball coach. So first, welcome, Leslie. And then, and anyone is also, able to share anything they'd like to on this topic. But go ahead, Leslie. Welcome.
Thanks, Michelle.
Uh-huh.
I think, yes, it would be, I think it's important that we at least mention the incidents that happened this week. But I think that a lot as a person who identifies strongly as Asian American. The incidents that have been occurring, not even just in the last year, but incidents that go unreported very regularly, hits very close to home. And so I think it's important that the larger public is seeing what's happening, and I think that it's important that the public understands that a lot of these things happen. They may not always result in a murder, but these attacks happen very often and they go unreported. And I think specifically with what happened in Georgia, it also sheds a lot of light into what it, around issues surrounding Asian women. And I think that that's a narrative that's not frequently addressed in the mainstream. So while what happened was extremely unfortunate, and a lot of people I know are very much grieving right now, I think it's important that we understand the complexity of what's going on, the complexity of even just the Asian community in itself, and also understanding how gender can even play a role in it. So I just wanted to add that short tidbit and encourage, education, learning, and solidarity.
Thank you so much. Was there anyone else that wanted to say anything at all? Yes, Sydney.
I was just going to add one of my really good friends from grad school. Her name is Madison, who's participated on this webinar a couple of months back. But she is Black and Asian on her mom's side. She's Filipino and Japanese. And so this week has been, really hard for her because a lot of people don't know that she has that Asian side. Like her mom is Asian and grandmother. And so this has been a really challenging week for her and her family. And just, they've been on Facebook, and her dad is from New Orleans and he's Black, but he has his wife's side of the family who's Asian, and he's been just seeing all of these ignorant comments on Facebook and has had to defend his wife and daughter. And so just keeping them uplifted in prayer because Black and Asian, that's almost like a double whammy, so but yeah, I'm just trying to keep lifting her up and just pushing out positive vibes toward her in this time.
That's good. It's good she has you. Did anyone else want to share anything? Keisha? You're on.
I just really wanted to say that I stand in solidarity and support with the Asian community, and like I also decry everything that's happening. And I've been very vocal about it on all my platforms, but I just wanted to say that I apologize profusely for what you guys are experiencing right now. I can certainly empathize, and just that, we are standing in solidarity with you.
Yes, most definitely. Um, since it is a discussion, any of the panelists want to say anything at this time? Okie doke. Well, I just wanted to again say yes, we stand in solidarity, and Shades Magazine and Exceptional Women in Publishing and Michelle Fitzhugh-CRAIG. I can't post enough to, as I have done with any group that has been attacked, marginalized, and like Leslie said, it's been in the forefront, the attacks on people of color the last year, but this has gone on for decades and it's got to change. So I just want to take a moment of silence for the people and the women that lost their lives in Atlanta this past week to horrible circumstances. Thank you. Well, let's go on and get to our real talk for today. So we talk about women empowerment and why women have become powerhouses in sports. And I did introduce Leslie, who is new to the group, and we welcome you. I also want to introduce Sharkisha, we call her Keisha Cummins, who is one of our regulars, and she is a stay-at-home mother of two, an aspiring writer, social worker who lives in Rochester, New York. And then also, we're doing a little switcheroo. I'm actually being the host today, and Sydney Clark is moving from the host seat just for today. She is a New Orleans native, is a multimedia freelancer, and current graduate student at the University of Maryland, College Park, studying multi platform journalism. She is also a contributing editor for Shades Magazine. And I was going to introduce Renice, but it looks like she is being taken care of right now. So, and that is Keisha's daughter who is popping up. So sometimes you will see, children of any of the guests around, and that's okay because it's real talk. It's real people. It's our real lives. So we're going to jump in because we have a lot to talk about. But feel free to learn more about these ladies via a link in the chat. Sydney, if you could put that in. We also invite those in attendance to join us in this discussion with questions, knowledge, and or any experiences you may like to share. So let us begin. I want to start out asking each of the panelists. Every woman has a superpower or superpowers. What is or are yours? And you can just feel free to jump in anytime. Come on, ladies. I'm going to call on somebody.
I guess
Sydney.
I can go.
Okay, Leslie.
Okay, I was gonna say, I guess I can go first. I think mine is the ability to like multitask like crazy. And since I am a stay-at-home mom, I am often doing multiple things at once, caring for the kids, cooking, cleaning, also doing homework for myself, and being like a cheerleader and champion. I do that not only for my kids, but for the people that I care about, and being an advocate and using my platform for good, I guess, is my superhero powers, if you can call it that.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I would say similar to Keisha, but I don't have kids, so I'm not juggling that. But I was gonna say like time management. I a lot of times I somehow find a way to make everything fit in a day. And sometimes like I surprise myself sometimes, like I can't believe I did all of this today. And it's essentially really important when you have to work full time and pre-COVID commuting, and then coaching kids like Fiona, who's on the call, well, when she was younger, and continuing to do like volunteer work as a coach. There's a lot of balance of time you have to take into account, including your job, and then their practices and games, and I don't know, there are other things I think I do. but I would say time management and trying to stay organized.
Okay, great.
So I think I'm going to go with two. The first one I have to say would be like being able to empathize with others and just being sensible toward other people's feelings. So my mom and I are both Scorpios, and my mom is a social worker, and so she has like a lot of that therapy background, just like really getting to the root of the problem and just the ability to communicate with people on like a sensitive level. And so I think I've carried on a lot of those traits from her. And then the other one would have to be I tend to give good advice. My friends are the ones who call on me for advice with any situation, particularly relationships, like romantic relationships, which I don't know who may be the expert because I myself have never been in a relationship yet. So, but yeah, I don't know. I'm apparently the one who gives the good advice that people need at that moment of time. So.
Okay. Thank you. I think that was everyone. Let's talk about women empowerment. What does that mean to you when, we say, oh, we want to empower women? I mean, Shades Magazine, that's part of our mission. What does it mean for you personally? I want to go, I guess, not just the definition, but personally, what does it mean and what have you done or been a part of that speaks of empowerment?
I'll go first on this one again. I don't mind. For me, it really just means that like empowering women to really feel strong and then feel like, okay, so I saw this TikTok. This is going to give an example. And there was a woman who was saying how white men, have like, they can get far in their company, because even for positions that they're not qualified for, because they just have that audacity, to just kind of say, I'm not qualified. I probably shouldn't be applying for this, but I'm going to do it and feel entitled to do it. And that we all should just kind of have that, and like an inner Chad in us, for exactly, like, like our inner Jimothy or whatever. So I think it's somewhere along those lines, like allowing women to feel strong and whatever their passion is. If it's being a stay-at-home mom or having a career, or being a writer, or whatever it is that you want to do, just allowing them to know that what they want to do is enough, and they don't have to ascribe to any societal idea of who they should be and how they should live their life. So I think that's a big part of it. So like, if you don't want to have kids, that's okay. You're a whole woman without having kids, even if society tries to dictate that is your role, that does not have to be your role. You can define who you are and feel strong in that. So that for me is what empowering women is, just supporting them and whatever it is that they want to do, even if it doesn't look like something you would do or would want to do. If it's what they want and they want to do that, just support them in that.
Thank you.
I think for me, when I think about, women empowerment, I think of just solidarity, community. Everyone has a seat at the table. I think of support, encouragement, all of those things. For me, like I come from, so my mom is one of eight and one of eight kids, and she has five sisters, five of them, five sisters total, and three brothers. And so, I've always grown up around like really strong Black women, and with my mom, with my dad's mom, who's my nana, who used to live in California, just just having these strong Black women as like role models and as a tribe to look up to. That's been very good, because I reciprocate all of those life lessons and the love that they've given me to my friends and those who I don't even know. So I'm always been observant of that.
And I completely agree with everything that's been shared. And I would also add that with empowering women, we also have an opportunity to not only support and show up in solidarity, but reframe how women are perceived by society. And I think that that is a very critical part. I keep thinking back to the theme of today around sports. Like, that's huge in sports, right? It's not about showing that women can do things exactly like how men can in the competitive field, but rather redefining like what strength looks like as a woman.
Want to kind of follow with what you had said about women in sports, and why do you think it's taken so long for women to emerge as being able to coach, being able to manage? What do you think was the roadblock for not seeing more women? And it's interesting that most of the women, if I'm correct, and Leslie's probably more in the sports, are women of color, which has been great, but what do you think was stopping it before, besides, the normal, male dominated, or what do you think is what pushed it into the limelight and making it more accepting?
I think that women have always been capable to coach, to play. I think that I think historically, I don't think women were offered opportunities, and I don't think they still are offered the same opportunities as, men in sports in general. And then I also think that, what we see as what's popular is based on what sells. And I think that's also very driven by a very one-dimensional way of looking at what sells in sports, because I think that women have always been really capable of being very competitive in sports that may even be seen as dominated by men. I also think that there's a lot of bias in society when you think about athletes. But if you look at certain sports, like if you look at tennis and Serena Williams, I mean, she's the best, right? not the best woman. She's the best in her craft. And so I think it's a testament to knowing, okay, there are a lot of women who are very accomplished. They don't get the media spotlight that they might deserve, and that's part of that bias, I think, of, oh, what sells, what's popular. And that's kind of been my personal mission in life when it comes to sports, without even realizing, since I've been playing basketball, to really try to, kind of break down those types of stereotypes. Um, and so, yeah, so I don't know how to really answer your question, Michelle, because I get really passionate about this topic.
No, that's fine.
But yeah, but I would say, women have always been there. They
Mhm.
just, we're getting the attention now, I think, for a lot of reasons. Social media makes it a lot easier for people to see things. I think that there's more of a consciousness in society where, um, equity and equality is more on the forefront of people's minds. And then in my professional world, around the diversity, equity, inclusion work, it's kind of like it's a business imperative at this point for a lot of companies to really think about it, and that's very new in the larger, just business world. So I think that's part of it too, that companies are paying attention to this topic. So then that's why we're seeing more of it.
Yeah. Um, Anyone else, Sydney or Keisha, have any thoughts or?
Yeah, I was gonna say kind of what I'm kind of building off of what Leslie just mentioned about social media. So, I'm a journalist, journalism background, and so I'm familiar with the media and how it works. And so something that came to mind was just like, the civil rights movement got the attention it got because of the media. Like, people were embedded on the ground, like showing what was happening. Whereas like when you look at how the media has covered sports, but not just sports from like the women perspective, it's been really limited. We have like the WNBA, but for the longest time, like I didn't know what the WNBA was, or who was involved, who were the players are, besides like Lisa Leslie, because she had been on like shown on appearances on like Sister Sister and like other Disney shows I used to watch back then. And so I think definitely social media has helped, bring a bigger light and highlight more of, the WNBA and all of these different players, female players particularly. And then the other thing, just about a roadblock, could be like just history and, societal structures, like those basic, stereotypes, like women should be in the house and, women should be able to cook and not really do anything outside of that. And so definitely like we've seen, women become these powerhouses in sports now, and not just sports, but in the workforce. And so it's completely shifted. We still have a long way to go, but I think there has been progress.
Sydney, Lisa Leslie's probably one of my favorite players of all time. And I mean, of course, we share a name.
It's so cool.
I love that you mentioned her.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Keisha, did you want? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. Like I obviously agree with everything you ladies have already said. And the other thing that I would just add is that I think too, you're seeing a lot of like societies push back too on these stereotypes. So for example, if there was some negative media coverage of women and it's clearly biased, you would see people now pausing to say, wait, like that's not accurate, or that's not fair, or that's sexist, or that's chauvinistic, and this stance is not appropriate. So you're seeing a lot more people calling it out. So it makes it harder for that behavior to continue when there's like so many people holding you accountable. So I think that that's part of why we're seeing like some of the change as well, is that as a society we're shifting, and we're no longer willing to accept that women have a role of lesser than, and we're equal players too in all arenas, including sports, and that we even dominate some of those arenas. And that we are going to be very vocal about that and not just accept things as they were before.
Keisha, you bring up a good point, and all of you do, but you talked about a shift. Now, is this really a shift in thinking and change? Or is it just kind of a trend, a flavor of the month of what's going on, or flavor of the year, seeing this change? And what do we need to do if that is what it is? What do we need to do to make sure this is something that is the norm now and moving forward, as a group or, as women? What do you think we need to do or should be done?
So I think that for some it might be a trend, but I think for more people it's not, and I think that can be attributed to a lot of this generation that's up and coming is being raised differently, to be more inclusive, to be more diverse, and to be more open-minded. So I think that is why we're seeing a lot of the change behavior, and a lot of these young people are very outspoken and they bring receipts, like they can back up what they're saying. They've done their own research. So they're not willing to just accept what is told to them. I think the way to keep it going is just to keep it in the forefront, just to keep the conversation going, and just to keep constantly talking about it. And in social media and on our platforms and in our personal lives, and holding each other accountable. So I think that is the way, from my idea of how we can continue to, so that it doesn't become a trend and it just becomes the norm.
I did want to add something, like, I'm going to take it from a political aspect. Obviously, like, Kamala Harris has the vice presidency, which is something that, years ago we would have never thought would happen, but here we are. And so that just by itself gives me this hope that maybe we are, headed in the right direction. It may be gradual, it may be slow, but maybe we are, making like actual progress and actual change in the right direction. So.
And I would also just add, one way to keep this conversation or topic at the forefront of people's mind is also calling out the inequities that we still see today. So I would highlight, I don't know if you've seen the news yesterday morning, that the collegiate basketball tournament, the NCAA tournament, both have men and women brackets. They're happening at the same time. And because of the pandemic, all 64 teams in each of their respective tournaments are in a bubble, a giant bubble. And the men have the state-of-the-art amenities, equipment. Yep, there it is. The women in one of their 4 locations has to share a rack of 6 pairs of weights, a few yoga mats, and 1 stationary bike. And both tournaments have 64 teams each. So if you think about it that way, we're seeing this right before our eyes. And the NCAA made a statement and said, we just didn't have enough space for the women. And that's not true, because there's plenty of space in their location. It just doesn't seem like they've made the investment to really create an equal space for that. So calling it out like that is really important, because sometimes things fly under the radar. I think if nobody said anything from the women's side, it probably would not have been picked up by the media outlets. So we're seeing it before our eyes, and I think that's really important to call it out.
Yeah,
Definitely. Like, power of social media, people are citizen journalists, meaning they can just pull out their phone and document everything. So that has, been really monumental, and I guess highlighting and exposing those inequities, because it's on camera. It's not like you can dismiss it, it's right in your face. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because as you see, I was ready to discuss it anyway. And it's just, even Steph Curry had said, come on now. It's like, how can you even think that, a set of barbells is going to compare to it? And I guess I forgot, and I'm sorry I closed it. One of the officials, the NCAA, said that, well, they only had 60 days to try to figure out things for 64 teams. And it's like, okay, but you were able to do this for the men. It just, they just order double of everything. It's like,
Yeah.
it's that easy. So,
can I just add too, with
yeah.
Steph Curry saying something, and actually at my organization yesterday, we had like a Women's History Month conversation, and this came up, of course. The story came up. And then somebody brought up, whenever Steph Curry speaks up, people listen. And so it's kind of like, okay, we need to leverage like our male allies. Steph Curry is someone that recognizes he has this huge platform, and he's trying to do it for good. But at the same time, why is it that way, where people will listen to Steph Curry but not a female athlete, right? So I think it's something that we have to be very aware of too. I think the NBA in the basketball world has really been doing a really good job, especially lately in showing solidarity and support for the WNBA. I don't think I've seen that in the 25 years that the WNBA has been in existence, at least not at this level. But yeah, but to what you brought up, Michelle, like Steph Curry said something and people are listening, right? But how can we get people to listen to the female voices as well?
Good point. Good point. Um, we have a question from the audience from Janice Lee, who is managing editor of Shades Magazine and a faithful supporter of our Real Talks. She asks, what is the path for women to enter sports as a career? Is it family watching sports together? And she says, what role does high school sports play in women entering sports as a career? So I see Leslie smiling.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
that's my world.
I know.
This question is my world.
Well, jump on it then. You go first.
Yeah. I think a big pathway is investing in girls playing in sports. And I'm going to reference my coaching experience as well as my own playing experience. So I coached for St. Mary's School in San Francisco, where I was born and raised. And I also went there from kindergarten to 8th grade. So that's where I started playing basketball. And it's a Chinese Catholic school, unfortunately closed in 2016, but it's a Chinese Catholic school. So most of the students there are Chinese. And I didn't realize a lot of this until I started coaching Fiona and these other girls' teams at the school, where my parents were really invested in me playing basketball. It was one of those things where invested in terms of especially time, right? I'm not going to, they made it work financially, but they also made it work with two working parents, making sure that I got the development, skill development, all of that. They were at every game. My dad recorded every game, and he also records every game I coach. So he comes to like every game. It's really cute. But then once I started coaching, and I coached both boys and girls, and I saw a huge difference between how in this specific community of mostly Chinese people, Chinese families, how different it was for boys and girls. And with the girls' teams that I coached, I gave a lot of rides because, and it's not a fault to the parents, right? Because in this community, there are a lot of immigrant parents who have to work, who own businesses in Chinatown. Fiona's parents own a business in Chinatown. So I gave a lot of rides because if I didn't do it as their coach, they may not be able to get to a game. So that investment doesn't have to only come from the parents, right? It comes from the village that raises the child. And so for me, I realized my village was not just my parents. My coach also gave me rides sometimes. I had, other parents on the team that supported too, right? We all supported each other. And so the difference I saw between the boys and the girls world is that the boys' parents were much more inclined to want to be there. The girls' parents were there, they're present, they're supportive. But a lot of times, if I look in the stands of the girls' games, there are fewer people there. And so that's one pathway, is really investing in it from a young age. And it's also another thing too, what my parents did that really helped me. Like I wanted to play basketball, but they kept me, kind of locked in with the training. Like, every kid is going to be the kid that says, I don't want to practice. I don't feel like doing it. I don't feel like doing extra work. And my parents went above and beyond and were like, no, we're going to the park and you're going to shoot however much. No, you're going to basketball camp and not sitting at home during winter break, things like that. And so, so that's part of that investment was, that you have to be really dedicated, for the development of children in general in sports, but especially for girls, if we want them to see a pathway. And then with high school, whenever I coached any of my teams, I played high school basketball up until varsity level, all 4 years. And I realized that, it's a unique thing to be able to do that for basketball specifically, depending on what school you go to, how competitive it is. So my mantra with the kids that I coach, I try to stay with the team until they graduate from 8th grade in that middle school age range. Um, I say, look, when you go to high school, try to play a sport. It doesn't have to be basketball. Try out for basketball, that'd be great, but it doesn't have to be basketball. And so, and the reason why I really support that is because it teaches you how to balance a lot of things in your life, and it carries over into adult life. If you play a sport in high school, more likely than not, you're going to be practicing 5, 6 days a week after school. You have the same workload of homework as any other student has. You have, and some teams practice twice a day, right? Depending on the sport. So it's really important, I believe, to really advocate for students to participate in athletics in high school, even if you're not good, right? It's not about being good; it's about being there and learning the soft skills that carry on into adulthood.
Yeah, I just want to add something to that. I agree wholeheartedly with the kind of teaching them young and bringing them in and how important that is. I have four grown kids now, but and following up on Janice's question on watching sports together, I guess we did. That was part of more their dad did because he's super into sports and I am too. But I made sure from an early age, okay, they were in t-ball, they were in basketball, and I made all four of them. We'd go together and watch the other playing. Even when the oldest, he was in high school. It's no, you're getting in the car and coming to watch your younger brother. We do this as a family, and I think it really brought them together, but it brought this respect of sports. Even the women respect. Now they don't play now, but just this respect of what it is, and what it can bring and do for you. And to this day, like my youngest son, he's getting ready. He kind of moved away from sports, although he still plays it, but he is going to be an athletic trainer. In fact, well, I can't say, well, I am going to say this. He just got offered a position to be an athletic director for a new school outside of Portland. He graduates in May with his master's. So he just got that, and he's got some others, but I won't talk about that on live TV. But so, it was just, in his dedication. So it does teach you a lot. And I see that. And I think it does begin at that young age, and that family and that investment. And I'm understanding, like Leslie, you said, it's not like, we think of sports and it's okay, basketball, football, baseball, but there's so many things that are sports that you can do and that teach you these valuable skills. So yeah. Sydney or Keisha?
Mhm.
Sydney?
So for me, like coming from New Orleans and Louisiana in general, we're very big on sports. I love the Saints, like diehard fan. I've been crying ever since
Drew.
Drew Brees announced his retirement. But I'm not going to talk about that. And just like NBA. We're now the Pelicans. We used to be the New Orleans Hornets before Katrina. So just, I remember like just going to the games with my dad, or just, when I get home from school, just watching a game on TV and just like having those moments with him. My mom would like come in and out of the room, but she wouldn't stay and watch the full game because it made her nervous, especially when the Saints were playing. But other than that, so I was an only child from the age of 0 to 7 before my sister came along. And so on those younger years, like I took dancing classes, but I really wasn't a big fan. I was honestly a tomboy from like younger up until like preteens. And so one day my dad took me to a martial arts class, just trying to expose me to different things. And I actually fell in love with it. And so that became my passion from the age of 5 up until sophomore year of high school. And then another thing that I appreciate about New Orleans is they have single sex high schools. There's a lot of thoughts about that. So in New Orleans, high school in the Catholic school system actually starts in 8th grade. And so 8th grade, I went to an all-girls school called Ursuline Academy. And there, I really found, I wanted to drive basketball. Like there was just all of these opportunities, like going to an all-girls school and having so many sports that girls can try out and like use their talents was like very appealing to me. So I played basketball my first and second year that I was there. I wasn't the best. And so I transitioned to being a manager for the team. And so every practice I was there, for every game I would take the score. If we were playing at home, I would, take the official scoreboard. And so like Leslie said, I could relate to a lot of those things, just having a balance, going to every practice, getting home late at night after a long day of being at school, or after games. And so that's something that, I was just grateful. And we had, we built a family with the team, and just being able to have those people to support you, even though I was really part of the team, I was, they accepted me as part of the team. So everywhere they went, I went along. And so I really just cherish those memories. And a really good thing to see is, being around the basketball team all of those years that I was there, is the coach that started as a coach became the athletic director. So she was promoted, and it was just, great to see the progression. And she won 2 championships while she was there. So state championships. So that was really amazing to see.
Keisha, did you have anything to add? You don't have to. Okay, that's fine. No problem at all. Um, Sydney, you mentioned the martial arts background that you have. And, as I mentioned earlier, we partnered this month with We Are Bruce Lee exhibit in San Francisco. And when someone says martial arts, I mean, your mind goes to Bruce Lee, you know. Um, and that's probably a sport. I mean, I personally see, young girls, their parents want to put them in it too, but you don't hear about it, a lot after that. And when I do see, women doing martial arts, it's kind of interesting that it seems to turn into this sexy thing versus the real art of the sport. I don't know if anyone else agrees with that. And it's usually on the, like on a movie screen or something like that. If you agree, and if that, what can we do to change that and not make it be sexy with women, but oh, wow, they're skilled, they're talented, they're really bringing something to the table. Any thoughts on that?
I think for me, I was just really grateful for the place where I went to practice, because everyone was on an equal footing level, whether if you were a girl or a boy. I mean, I started out, 5. I got my black belt, my first degree black belt when I was 10. And up until that point, I had been displaced by Hurricane Katrina that hit in 2005. And the one thing that I appreciated about this specific place that I went to, so the name of the martial arts center is called Kuksulwan, and it's actually a global martial arts thing. So its headquarters is in Korea, but they have facilities all across the U.S., even in California. And so every few years or so, we would go to Houston, Texas, and we would do like our big tournament. And it was just like you could just see the solidarity and community just among all of these different people. Even though we were all in different places, we still came together, and like I said, everybody was on equal footing. So I don't know, I think it depends on the institution, I have to say, but also where you live. I know for New Orleans, we have a couple of like karate and martial arts centers, and a lot of it is just, community based. Like they'll do a lot of events together, just to get people together and, practice different forms or techniques with each other. So I'm not sure. At least I'm not, I don't know how to answer that question, just based on my experiences.
Mhm. Okay. Leslie.
I would say though, people who, help shape, youth in their skills around any type of athletics has to also teach them about the real purpose behind why we're doing it. And we're not doing it to become professional athletes. I mean, a very small percentage of people actually do get into that professional field. And it's not always about even winning championships, though, of course, that always feels good and winning always feels good. But I've had teams who were probably never going to even win more than 2 games in a year. And coaching those types of teams is actually quite rewarding, even if we're always losing, because you're not, you don't, you're not, I would also like try to teach them, like, you're not here to become, to get a division 1 NCAA college scholarship to play this sport. I'm not even asking you to necessarily play the sport in high school. I'm asking you to just work hard right now. And the true motivations I believe around why people should get into athletics is not for the glory, fame, but really for yourself. Um, I found a lot of, I built a lot of self confidence and self motivation by being in sports. That I think if I didn't have that, it would have been very difficult adolescence for me if I didn't have that in my life. So yeah, I would just say, we should think about or teach the real motivations behind why we should be actively involved versus aspiring for fame.
True, true. Keisha?
I was just gonna say too that I think there needs to be more like actual representation too. Cause I think like for me growing up, I didn't really see a lot of women like in sports. I think the first time I even like had an inclination that that was something women could do was like in a movie, the Love and Basketball movie. And I was like, oh, wow, there's a girl. And it was like an anomaly. It wasn't, it was like, it was an exception to the rule. And it was like, okay, this is happening because this is a movie, but this is not something that typically happens. And it was just I kind of always grew up with the idea that sports were for men and that women did other things. And it just was kind of reinforced by society, by what you see. And I think it's changing a little bit more. Like you're seeing, like, I think a while back they did like a commercial, like hit like a girl, kick like a girl, but it was like empowering and showing that women too can do these things. So I think that's a big part of it. Like not only having like your family like expose you to it and allow you to like just explore and try different things, but just having like that actual like positive representation so that they can see that this is something that women do, it's not, so that they can feel empowered and comfortable enough to like go out and try it on their own and do these things.
Okay, thank you. I just, I want to take a second here to personally thank Sydney Clark because this is my first go at host and I don't know how she does. Like, I've got so much, you guys are giving me so much, and then I'm seeing things in the chat. And I'm like, where do I go here? But I did want to go back to a couple of things in the chat. Just so commitment works here, just try. Fiona had said about, it's important that just try something, it doesn't matter. We need to make sure, the youth understand you don't have to be, perfect at this, just try something. And if you got to try 15 things, I've heard parents, and I was kind of like that of, what do you want to do, and try this and just go for it and allow them to do that. My youngest daughter was actually, I used to watch her on the monkey bars and she just had no fears. I was like, oh, she's in gymnastics. She's going to be this great gymnast, So that's probably part of the thinking that some parents bring. But I did put her in a year and a half, a lot of money. And I had no problem investing because she enjoyed it. But there was one skill she was just too fearful of before she could get on the team. And I couldn't pay another, 3 years because she wasn't wanting to go past that point. So we stopped, no problem. But yeah, try something. Leslie, were you gonna add something?
I have a story that
Yeah.
Actually it's Fiona's team. When they were in the 6th grade, there were a few new girls joining the team, and a new girl that joined the school. She came, and Fiona references the athletic director that really supported her classmates and her. And yeah, he went above and beyond to try to get kids involved. So we had one of these new girls joining the team. She came to one practice. She was very shy and timid, and she came to one practice. Then we had a game with this team, And the game was like the next day or something. And, you know, she shows up to the game not wearing her uniform. And I said, "What's going on?" And she says, I'm going to quit the team. I said, "Why?" She goes, "I'm just not good." And first of all, I completely disagreed with it because I saw her running in practice and she was really fast. You know, she just didn't have the confidence in her
Yeah.
skill. And I think she might have been scared to compete. So she shows up in her regular clothes, and I in my head I'm like, I can't let this kid quit just like after one practice. So I told her, you know, you only had one practice, it's okay. And I said, why don't you sit on the bench with the team and tell me how you feel after the game. And then this game, we got whooped because we only maybe scored 4 points and lost by, I don't know, 25, 30 points. It wasn't a game that really counted anyways. It was like a preseason game. But the camaraderie the girls had on the bench with each other while they were trying to battle against a team that was obviously much more skilled than they were at that time, created this space for this girl, where she just got really excited. And then after the game, I asked her, I said, "Are you going to come back?" And she goes, "Yeah, I'm going to play." And she played until we graduated eighth grade, and we won a championship in eighth grade, all of that. But that's one of those things where, you know, I feel like it's easy for a kid to say, I don't want to do it anymore. And it's on the village, not just the parents, but on the village to really try to get them to try something new and to step beyond what even they think they know they can do.
Yeah. Um, I want, did anyone want, oh, Sydney.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I think that's how I felt because I started playing in high school and then I was like, well, I'm not that good and I really don't want to do this anymore, but I still wanted to be involved somehow. And so, that's when I just had a conversation with the coach and she was like, I could see you like, doing like just helping us with like managing the team and stuff. And so that opened up a whole new door and I just loved it, just taking score for the games and stuff. I felt powerful. So, it helped me. Yeah.
That's an
Um,
important job, Sydney. Very important.
yeah.
Very important. The official scorekeeper.
I think I did that once. Um, but I was a pom pom girl, so that was my thing. And I felt I wasn't that good in sports. I might have been, but my parents didn't push us like I pushed my kids or encouraged and gave them reason. I wanted to, you guys have talked about the village, and in our cases, a lot of time it is our village of color, our culture that, our people that are there to support us. And Alex had mentioned in the chat that going to a mostly white high school, um, starting a new sport was difficult and intimidating. And I think that is true that um, I know where I'm going with this. I know when my kids, as I said, were in youth sports, and we actually moved out of Phoenix back to my parents' home, which is Glendale. It's right next door. But the demographics of the two cities, 20 some years ago, Glendale was clearly, if I put them in youth sports there, they would be surrounded by a lot of white children. And it was very important to me that they stayed in the Phoenix youth sports program. So I drive over there and we ended up moving back into Phoenix. But it was very important to make sure that they were around diverse teams and people that looked like them, that made them feel welcome and not like, you know, the outsider kind of. So I think that's really important if you can do that, in a city like this, it's easier, but in Phoenix, in 1990s, early 2000s, it was not as diverse as this area is. Um, did anyone have anything right now?
hmm I was gonna say, so the summer before I started eighth grade at Ursuline, I actually attended like there was like a 3 week like volleyball camp, and I was super intimidated because like 90% of those girls were white. They came from like the rich area of New Orleans. Like the school is located uptown New Orleans, very bougie. A lot of tourists, stuff happens there. And so I just felt like intimidated. But then I was like, I really want to play volleyball because I had played in middle school and I just wanted to, like, just have fun. But I got over my fear. I was able to make friends with, some of the girls, even though I committed to not playing volleyball in high school. I was just, I was like, look, I'm here. I might as well make the best of it. I just wanted to overcome that little fear, and I ended up doing fine, and it became fun once I got over that fear. So
Yeah, Leslie, what are you gonna say?
Yeah, and the representation piece is also very close to me. Being Asian American, Chinese American, and playing basketball, you don't see a lot of people, let alone women, but people who look like you. Um, you think about, oh, who do we have in professional basketball who's Asian American, and we have Jeremy Lin, and that's who we have. And so and it was really important for me that I felt like I had to be a role model to like the Chinese students that I coached, both boys and girls, because I know what it was like to play on a team with mostly Chinese girls. We show up at the gym for a game, and we see the other team look at us and just assume many things. And we're not tall. I mean, I'm 5'4", and I had to play, the position of like the tallest player on the team sometimes, right? But I learned how to work with that, and learn to work with my strengths. And believe it or not, my team back in my grade school age, one of our strengths was rebounding, even though we would play against really tall white girls. Like we would out rebound them. And so there are ways where you can really sort of change that, the way you think about how to be good in basketball, right? And so the representation piece, though, it's still a challenge, because those kids don't see people other than Jeremy Lin playing at the highest level. And so I think that it's important that we understand, and also educate our own community about sports, because so Fiona brought up a comment about, like, what about parents who might want to keep you away from playing sports, right? And I think that I made it a mission when I coached at St. Mary's to help educate parents to understand your child, your daughter playing sports is going to help her in the future. I'm not asking her to be the best. I'm not asking her to be good. I'm asking you to let her try. I even had a conversation with a parent whose daughter played volleyball, but she was in the 8th grade. It was the last year of her being at that school, and she wanted to try basketball. And her mother was afraid to let her play because she was afraid she was going to get hurt in a contact sport. And I realized the importance of me being somebody from that community. And I also spoke to her in Chinese as best as I could, to explain to her in a culturally relevant way, like, look, I did it, and I'm okay. I got hurt. I think I mentioned to this mother, I'm also CPR certified, so I know how to wrap an ankle, right? Like I was trying to like help her feel comfortable with the idea to let her daughter try, this sport, because and not to let something like fear to hold her back. And you know what? Injury, I didn't tell her, oh, your daughter's not going to get hurt. I said injuries happen, and it's very common. But what's really important is you have a coach that knows how to tape up a jammed finger. Like that, I know how to handle it. And if she gets hurt, she's not going to be forced to play. Like it's and to really try to like educate families who may not be as accustomed to having kids being super active in sports. And I think that's part of that, right? It's part of the representation too. It's like having people who come from that community, who understand, and also to taper expectations, right? Like we've been saying, like we're not I've been saying, I don't expect people to play at even the high school level if that's not what they want to do, right? But educating, like, it's about the here and now for your child.
Yeah. Sydney.
I was just gonna say, like, another memory that I have, like traveling with the team, to all of these different all girls high schools in the New Orleans area. Like, the parents are the most supportive people out there. Like, they were in the stands for every game, cheering their daughters on, and that was just so refreshing to see. Like, the crowds would be full, and that was an awesome thing to see, because of course, you know, the guys games are going to be full, but to see the stands just as full for the women's game was really special to watch.
That's neat. Um, I want to, I would love to talk kind of more on this angle, but I want to switch back because you guys have brought in some of the things you have done, you know, when you were younger. And did you play any sports? And I guess, you know, I want to start with Keisha, only you know, you had brought up um, the idea that you experienced that women didn't play sports, girls didn't, you know, play sports when you were younger. And did you play any sports? And why or why not? And just your thoughts around all that. And you've got two children, as we've seen one and heard the other. What are your thoughts going forward? And your daughter, the baby there, you know, putting her in sports?
So growing up, I mean, I don't think I really, well, when I was in grade school, I did do track for a little while, just out of curiosity. So I did do a little bit of that. Um, it wasn't encouraged or discouraged by my parents, by my grandmother, really, who raised me. And the same with when I was in high school, I did a little bit of volleyball, and I love that, just out of my own curiosity. But it was kind of, I did come up. It's kind of the gendered roles of like women don't do that. It's you know, so getting out of my own head and the ideals that I was raised with that women. Like, I know my father intentionally, like put my brother like into sports and things, and intentionally decided like you're gonna be in Girl Scouts. I remember when I was like very young, my brother was in like martial arts, and I wanted to do the martial arts too. And he was very adamant that no, I could not do that because I was a girl, and made me do Girl Scouts, which I did not want to do. So it's kind of like just reinforcing these ideals of what women should and shouldn't do, which I've completely got away from. So I think for my kids, I do want to make sure that I expose them um, I like my daughter, I absolutely would expose her to sports. Like just like with my son, he's allowed to have dolls. I don't really raise my kids in like a gendered way. So like whatever they want to do, I just encourage it and I support it because I think that's like the most important thing. So like if my daughter wants to play basketball, she can do it. If my son wants to, you know, do dance, he can do it. I don't subscribe really to ideas that certain things have to be attached to a gender. So I'm kind of raising them in that way.
Um, Anyone else on their youth experiences? And I guess the other two, both of you, you know, were more active. Um, what were your fun experiences or maybe not so fun experiences, and where you had to put in that extra effort, you know? And did you ever feel like, I want to give up? Or did you ever feel like, you know, because you didn't, I mean, it was a fact for the most part that you didn't see a lot of women, at least on the professional level, you know, and you definitely didn't see coaches and managers. But did that play in any way with your decisions of staying, not staying, or was it really up to your parents? And just, you know, tell us a little bit about more about your experiences as a youth player or athlete.
I know when I was in high school and I played volleyball, I remember getting really frustrated because this is around the time where like girls are kind of getting interested in guys and wanting to date, and no, they wouldn't take it seriously. And I used to get, and I remember thinking at the time, I just thought I was like overly competitive. So like, say the ball is coming at them, and if there's like a guy on the sidelines that they like, they're like, and it used to drive me nuts because like I wanted to win. I like really wanted to win. So I think that after a while, I just couldn't do it anymore because I would get so frustrated. And it wasn't like, I mean, it wasn't serious. It was just in high school and it was just in gym. But I used to get so competitive that for the longest time I was thinking like, there's something wrong with me because I'm getting way too worked up. Like, will you just hit the, you know, I used to get really bent out of shape at like a lot of the girls, like just being too cutesy, I guess, and not playing the game. Like, just play the game. I want to win. So that's why I stopped playing.
I relate to that so much because I was probably a late bloomer when it came to liking boys. And the I think the year that like it really changed for me as like for my love for basketball, um, was the same year Titanic came out, and all the girls in my class were all about Leonardo DiCaprio, and I was all about, the Stanford women's basketball team and how they were doing and who scored how many points and all of that. And it was a little awkward. And this is what I think sixth, seventh grade. And it was definitely really awkward. And then the whole thing with girls trying to be cute on the court. Oh my gosh, my teammates in the seventh, eighth grade, if they had, it was a small school. We had like 35 students in the class. And so, when the boys show up to the game, the girls like had a crush on them, they would they would totally hog the ball. Like they would not pass the ball and then miss their shot because, they wanted to put on a show. And I just wanted to win the game. I mean, so I can relate to that. But it's funny to think back at it now. And so I use that a lot with girls that I coach to remind them that we're not there to look cute and pretty. We're there. We have one job to do, and is to play hard in this game. So I don't care who is in the stands. You do not look at them. You do not care who's there. I don't care if you like them or not. For the next 24 minutes of the game, you are going to not think about that boy you might have a crush on who's watching you play. You play what we taught you to do. And there was another time too, and that's another thing with like girls sports is like the image, your image as women in general is such a big thing that gets normalized with us. So I had a team of girls I coached a couple of years ago now, and they would show up to practice and like they would wear really short, t-shirts to practice. And then we'd have them do jumping jacks or something. And then the girls would say, I don't want to do them because I don't want my shirt to fly up. And I said, okay, let's talk about what we're going to wear at practice. Are we here to look cute? No, I don't care what you look like. Nobody's here watching you here at practice. I don't care what you look like. You have to come to practice from now on wearing something you're comfortable in. And if you are afraid of your shirt flying up and exposing your midriff, then don't wear that. Wear something that covers it, wear something bigger, because we're not here to make fashion statements. We're here to play basketball. And so that's definitely a very constant struggle. I think even I went through that too, like as a player. So it's kind of a struggle that I don't think boys and men ever really have to think about as much, feeling self-conscious about how you look.
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely, Keisha, that story is just resonates so many memories for me.
So doing karate, that was one thing I was really appreciative of was the uniform because, it was all black, the only thing different was your belt depending on what level you were. But like, kind of what I was saying before, like that equal footing, I think really played like a major part in why I wanted to continue doing karate, for almost 10 years. And so I just remember, those first couple of classes, I was 5 when I started. So at that point, the place was in a different building in the city. And so they dedicated, this room would be the little kids. This room over here, would be like the older kids. So, while standing in line, like trying to like hit the mat with our hand, I would just be looking, all the other people like, ooh, I want to do that. Or, people were doing flips on the maps and on the mats. And I was like, okay, like I want to do this. And so I think because I've always been a nerd. Like I love to study. I love to study for tests. And so I kind of took that mindset with karate and, like, because you have to, know certain stuff before you can advance. So I would, come home from practice and like literally whatever I was taught, I would just be doing in the living room, by myself. My mom would be washing the dishes, but I was like always determined, and focused on getting to that next level. And I think that physical accomplishment, like you getting that stripe on your belt or just another color belt, it's like, okay, I can do this. Like I can get, up to a black belt or further. And so I really enjoyed it. In high school, I just became busy. I was very involved, with basketball and all these other clubs. And so that's something that I regret is not going forward to get my second degree black belt. Because I have forgotten a lot of the stuff that I learned from martial arts, but I still have those basic, elements and skills that I have and can, take with me for further.
Okay. Thank you very much. It, staying just a minute longer on your youth experience, what are your biggest tech takeaways and lessons you learned personally from being involved? You were all at some point a little, but is there something that you learned in that experience that you use today and are, thankful that you took part in it?
I think when I was younger and just really diving into the sport, I mean, I always thought, I can do whatever a guy can do, right? Like that, like to put it super simply. And that in itself helped build a lot of self confidence I had, that I think that I carry into my adult life. And I also remember that first time I heard about confidence in basketball. I was 10 years old and went to the Stanford women's basketball camp, which I am still a big fan of that team. And this is another an example of a women's team that performs way better than the men's.
Yeah.
So I encourage everyone to follow them because they're really amazing. But I think it was like the coach came in to do like a talk and started talking about confidence. And I'm like, what is that? What does that mean? And it just really, I really absorbed it that day. And then that was kind of one of those turning points for me where previous to that camp, I was maybe kind of mediocre in the sport. But after that, I was just really deep into this. Like I credit basketball for being something that even pulled me out of some dark times as a teenager, right? It was something that was always there for me. And and then the confidence piece also ties with the representation piece, right? Where when I show up at a game, whether I'm a player or the coach, and people look at us and see, okay, we're going to beat this team, right? How do we exude that confidence when we're playing to prove people wrong? And and so I carry that too in my life every day. Like I think a lot of my confidence comes from having learned it from the sport.
Thank you.
For me, it was one of my fondest memories just like learning like some Korean, like, because we would do like our number counts in Korean, we would do like our stances in Korean. And so like I still remember like I can count up to like 20 in Korean. And that's something that I've always been like, oh, do you know I can do this? Kind of showing off. But as far as like other things, as far as takeaways, definitely, getting my black belt at such a young age was a huge accomplishment for me. And, something, especially like with everything that happened with Katrina, like just me being able to continue doing karate for that same institution, while my family was evacuated was a blessing in itself, because who would have thought that there was another location to where we evacuated to. And so that was just a sign, I think, for me to just continuing, to do, what I would like to do, which was martial arts at the time. And, friends like they came and, did martial arts for a few years and then said, I don't really want to do it anymore. But something told me to just keep going. And so I think a lot of my motivation came from, pushing through karate and, being a basketball manager. So all of those things kind of have helped me, just be who I am today, which is a very motivated. I think I'm a leader. I would perform like, like lead the class in our exercises during martial arts. And then, I would lead some Zumba classes in college. And so that's, just some of those takeaways were really big for me.
I think for me it was really feeling like I like the way I felt when I was like doing like the running and the playing sports. It made me feel like stronger, healthier, and it helped with the decisions that I made. It made me feel like good on the inside and on the outside. I felt like I could do more, and then it just made me feel more complete and healthy and happy as a person. So that's kind of what I take away from that.
Yeah. I think, I'll say for me, I did do some sports. I did some, I think it was swimming, and there was something I don't think it was basketball. I think it was like T-ball or something I did a little bit of. But just that competitive nature that I have, and I'm very competitive now, but I don't have to win, which some people are like, oh, right, they think if, oh, you're competitive, you have to win. No, I just like going into it with my all, trying my best, having faith that I can, win. But if I don't, hey, okay, there's another time. So I think that's just me. And Sydney just reminded me of and this is my daughters may have had very a lot of experience, and it's not sports, but a program they were in where the director of it was Chinese, and he would teach them Chinese, and to this day they still know some. And so, when I was teaching it, I tell everybody, it's my motto, think outside the box and always look at it, what did I learn? What can I take away from this experience? Even when you hate something, there's always something that stays with you, and I believe, everything has a reason. And, maybe that one little thing was the only reason. So, and talking about being competitive, is there such a thing of being too competitive? And that could be in sports or it could be in life. Do you think that's a good attribute or do you not?
If you ask my mom, yes. I definitely have a hard time losing, and I think I'm better now. But all the people that are here and know me know it's really hard for me to accept loss. Even if I'm watching like the Golden State Warriors play, like I get really angry if they're playing poorly and they're losing. But is it possible to be too competitive? I think it can. You can, if it overtakes your life, right? And I think that there's a healthy balance that I even had to find for myself as a coach. Not even as a player, as a coach, I had to find that. I used to, when I started coaching, I might have been, I think I was like 24 years old when I started coaching. Um, when my team would lose, there was some times where I would take it really hard and it ruined my day, and that wasn't really the healthiest. So I had to learn as I went. You know what? They lose, they lose, and at some point, I have to just kind of let it go, and I learned to just accept that I can't control what the kids do on the court as a coach. It's I did all I could up until that moment to teach them. It's on them, right? And so I think it's important to find that healthy balance between how of being competitive, and then and most importantly, if you lose, there's so many lessons you can take from losing.
True.
From my experience, sitting on the sidelines for basketball games, taking score, like there were some parents in the stands that did the absolute most. They were very, using foul language and all of these things. And that I think affected the players. Like there was this one particular player in general on our team. Her name is Brooklyn Mitchell, and she's now at, I think, Kansas State, I think, playing basketball. So she, advanced. But I mean, she was very bad about, if she, did a foul or a mistake, she would really harp on herself, and she would carry that the rest of the game. Like it would just affect the mood of the team. The coaches would be pissed at her and all of these things. So she was very, overly competitive to where like she just shut down. So but to be able to see her progression, her getting better at, okay, like, this is a mistake, like let's not carry that thinking all the way throughout the rest of the game and have my mood affect my teammates and our ability to just, play. So yeah, but definitely there were some parents that, really, yeah.
Um,
I was
going.
just I'm sorry. I was just gonna say that it depends on like I think it's important. Like I think it's good to be competitive and it's healthy, but I think that it shouldn't like define you. And I think that's part of it. Like when it becomes your identity, like this thing becomes your identity. Then if you lose, then it's like, oh my gosh, I failed and like I'm a failure instead of looking at it as just a temporary setback. So I think that's part of it. And I think a lot of parents tend to do that too, like with their kids, if there's something they wanted to do. So they kind of got their kids into it. So they're living vicariously through them. And so now they have this like set goal that they want their kids to do because they were never able to reach it. And then it becomes toxic in that regard. So I think that it really depends on like why you're competing. Like, are you doing it because you want to push yourself, you want to win, and that's okay. But like, with the understanding that if you don't win, it's completely okay too. Like, what did I learn from this so that like I can improve going forward? So I think that's like part of it. Like, just losing gracefully is really important.
Yeah. I must say, I was honest with saying I don't have to win, but true confessions. I was one of those parents that was a little vocal, and I continue to be a fan that is very vocal. I do not cuss, but I am very passionate about teams, and I was with my kids too, but I think because I like sports so much, so, but again, if they didn't, it was like, okay, next time. We got more games to go, and then when it was summer or whatever, okay, I can't wait till the next. But I was one of those, and I think it was just, and maybe it was passion, just showing the excitement and support of the team and in support of my kids that makes them, even though sometimes they'd be like, oh my gosh, I don't know her, but it was like, hey, she really cares. Hey, she's here. Um, so I think that's important. I think I saw.
Can I add to that point
Yes,
though, Michelle, about being vocal?
yes.
Because my style as a coach is very vocal and
Mhm.
loud. And so, and I think that's okay, right? Because there's a part of me that does that because that's how I was coached. But also, there's a part of me where I show up in a lot of spaces as a coach, and I am sometimes one of the only female, and a lot of times maybe the only Asian female. And Fiona just said the refs all knew her as the screaming coach. Thanks. But, but the thing is, though, when it comes to being loud and vocal, it's about your message as well. I would never in my life put down any child that I coach, ever. I would find a way to give them constructive feedback so they learn, and games can be really intense. No way would I ever say a curse word, in the presence of the kids. Um, and so, I think that it's also about like what you're saying. People sometimes perceive it as like, oh, like she's loud, right? But I believe, okay, I can be loud, but I also need to make sure what I say is very intentional and very much uplifting and not taking anybody down.
Correct. That is so true and something I agree with and do myself. Anyone else want to? You don't have to if you don't want to. Okay. We have a question for Leslie, and I see the other question from Fiona, and I am going to get to it, so don't worry. Um, Leslie, can you talk about how you found your loud voice, particularly since many Asian American women are discouraged from doing this? Ooh, I love that.
Oh, such a good question. I think a lot of it had to do with the confidence that I built, you know, at the age of 10 or so, starting to play basketball and finding kind of my own identity, even at that young age, where I just stopped caring what other people thought of me. And it's not perfect. I think about what people think of me all the time. But I also, my entire life playing basketball has been about, undoing stereotypes of what people might have of people who look like me, whether or not they play basketball, it doesn't matter. And and I feel like it's really important, even as a coach in a space where it's still dominated by, men, and in a Catholic school league, white men, I have to speak up. If I don't, then they're just gonna overlook me. There's one time at every year for coaches that volunteer, we have to take an annual training to get recertified every year. And there was one year where we were in this training and we were put into groups for discussion. And one of the prompts, or there were two questions being asked of us to discuss, and one of them was geared for new coaches. Um, so we get into the group, and there's this really tall, middle aged white man who says, okay, who are the newbies in this group? And he looks straight at me. And I said, this is my 8th year. And so it's really important to me to be able to have that vocal presence, right? Because here's the reality. If I had been coaching for 8 years at that point, I probably knew a lot more about developing kids in basketball than the other men in the group. So I should represent, and I realize that I am representing a community of people, and I personally am okay with that.
Okay, thank you so much. I wanted to ask a question about, there we have seen this increase, and that's what we're talking today, partly with women coaches, with women managers in professional sports. And how do you think this will impact young women in sports, and or to even either play it or watch it or just pursue some type of career in it? If I want to share something first, my students, I used to because my course, I was teaching graphic design at the Cronkite School, journalism, and everyone there wants to be a reporter, they want to be on air, they want to be the star. Sydney knows, at the New York Times or whatever it is. But, they come into my class like, what do I need this for? And it's like, you know what? You're all not going to make it to the top. It's just a fact. So, what can you do? What skills can you use to either choose a side path or to be able to get your foot in the door hired somewhere because you bring something extra to the table? And when they started realizing that, they found it more fun, they got into it, and many of them aren't it writing or they're in the media field, but many of them have steered towards design and photography, things that are more visual. In fact, one, she was doing it on the side and she just kicked it off full time doing photography for uh, weddings and couples and engagements. And it's just like, wow, I'm not saying I'm the reason, but, just having that alternative, choice. And do you think seeing the female coaches versus, because there aren't what WNBA and, individual sports, but do you think it'll help them start getting into sports on another level?
I certainly do. I think, like I said, representation does matter. So I think the more you see people who look like you or who are women doing these things, it normalizes it and it empowers you to feel like you can do it too because you're seeing it done. So I think that it will be really great for like the next few generations coming up, that they see these powerful women doing these amazing things in sports and in all other areas, and will feel empowered that they can also do the same.
Yeah, I can definitely going off of what Keisha said, just from my experiences, being on the team, like I said, we became a family. And like that extended, from the head coaches who used to give me rides home every now and then, just having those chats in the car is something that will always remember, just like they knew everything about us. Like they asked how our family was. My grandma used to make this pecan candy and would bring some to the basketball coaches, every year. So just like establishing, just like, that family, like familial aspects, I think helps too, because that crosses, all barriers. I think when you know the family member's name, like, oh, hi, how are you? Like just speaking to people and just things like that. I think that helps too. So, not just playing the sport, but also just like breaking barriers and just like knowing your personal life and knowing your players' lives, I think makes all the difference as well.
I agree completely. I think that seeing especially women coaching in the NBA, um, I don't think there's nearly enough people, but we're getting there. We're making progress, and I would encourage people who see these trailblazers to really also learn their stories as well. Like Becky Hammon, who is one of the assistant coaches for the San Antonio Spurs, has a very decorated basketball career as a player, and for her to reach that point to being a coach, I think it's really it's a huge win for women athletes. And I would also just encourage people to read about these folks.
Yeah, thank you. Wanted to ask a little bit of a transition, but what progress have you seen on gender equality in your own life and work? And so this doesn't, I mean, with Leslie, you got the sports there, but you do other things. But, we're talking about gender equality here and, the fight for it. How do you see that in your own life and work?
Well,
Go ahead, Keisha, go ahead.
no, guys, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, being in the journalism field, like women in leadership positions, has been something that I've noticed that has lacked historically, women being editors or even news directors or like the head of the publication. And I think that is gradually progressing. I'm seeing like so I'm a freelancer. So one of the editors that I work with for Catholic News Service, like she's been there for years, and to see her finally get promoted to basically being the national editor has been a really like big success that I really like. I could see myself being editor one day, so just having her there in that position to mentor me and just have her tell me everything that she's had to endure. I mean, she's a white woman, older white woman, who's the editor there, but especially like seeing the lack of diversity in those leadership positions, even though like I said, I've been seeing like some gradual shifts, but I think that we need a major wave. And I think that's, goes back to saying representation does matter. Like who are in these newsrooms are affecting the storytelling and, those stories that are being covered. And so that's something that I'm really passionate about and pursuing, is just advocating for diversity in the newsroom and also media literacy. I don't think we have enough of that, especially with social media and people going down rabbit holes with looking up sources that aren't necessarily the most credible. And so just being an advocate for that. And yeah, so.
Keisha, are you gonna?
Sorry, I was just gonna say that I am currently a stay-at-home mom, but when I was working, I did a lot of, and sometimes I still do a lot of volunteer work with like refugees coming in because I'm bilingual. So like I usually help just basically help them get acclimated and situated. And in those, when I do that, I did tend to see a lot, like it was majority women and that were in positions of power. So that was really great to see. Also, I maybe it's just my social media, but like a lot of the social media that I am on, like TikTok, Facebook, I do see a lot of women in positions of power advocating and using their platform and their voices to speak up. So I think that we're we're getting a lot further. I'm even seeing men recognize that, hey, women have equal rights and equal say, in that, when you see something that is going against that, then you should speak up and advocate for it. So I'm seeing that not just like feminist women, but feminist men also who are like recognizing that. I mean, I do see obviously, negative stuff as well, but I'm seeing mostly like positive, affirmative, like women empowering things.
I would share in my professional world, working for a children's healthcare system and a pediatric hospital. We are probably unsurprisingly majority women. Uh, and a large part of the workforce are nurses. So within that workforce segment, very, very heavily majority women. So it's definitely reflective of, our history around, who becomes doctors and who become nurses. I also learned that pediatricians generally tend to be more heavily women than other, medical areas. And so that kind of speaks to a lot of, I guess, biases around like what, maternal care and things like that. That's my theory. But then when it comes to leadership, I think we do, in my organization, we do have a number of very visible and strong female leaders. But something that I have heard come up recently is like when those leaders leave the organization, we feel sort of at a loss among the women in the organization, like that we hope that that we can replace them with another strong woman leader. You know, I I think so. Also, my organization, the top most senior role is held by a man, a black man, which I think is incredibly great. But it's still held by a man nonetheless. And so I think that, yeah, we do have a long way to go. And even if we are an organization that employs a majority of women, It doesn't mean that there aren't, gender related microaggressions or assumptions or biases that happen in the workplace. And I hear this a lot actually in my workplace, that a lot of times a male nurse might come into the room and the patient and family assumes that he's the doctor. And so, and even, with physical therapists and things like that, like different roles that men might be in the organization, they are usually assumed to be the physician that is, that's there to care for the patient. And so, that tells me that there's still a lot to do, right? That just having on paper a majority number of women employed doesn't mean that the work is done when it comes to gender equity.
Well, what I'm going to do now is head into our last question and a little bit of discussion. And this is from Fiona, and I thank you so much because I was going with something else, but I love this. And she asked, "Is there a perspective you heard today that you'll walk away with?" And I also invite anyone that's on the call, the audience, if you want to say something, you don't have to come on camera. Please do just raise your hand and we'll make sure you're unmuted and can answer that. But again, is there a perspective you heard today that you'll walk away with? You know what? I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go to any of our guests that want to answer, and then you three ladies last. So Fiona.
Thanks for hosting this talk, by the way. Something that I'm taking away from this and something that I've definitely overlooked as like a student athlete myself is the how much empowerment managers can actually get from these roles. Because oftentimes we're like, play the sport, build that confidence, right? But we never think about, hey, the person taking score, like they're really important. Like, how are we supposed to know how many like fouls people are doing? How do we know like how fast that
Timeouts.
ran? Like things like that. Like we definitely always like I've definitely overlooked it. And I can definitely speak for other people that that's definitely very overlooked. And so that's something I'm definitely like taking away from this, and definitely like a way that I can tell other people to get involved, because not everyone's gonna like be able to run super fast, right? That's some people just have two left feet. Um, but being able to just like be there with a team, I feel like that camaraderie is like very important in building up like young women.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else that wanted to add anything? Okay, then our ladies, Keisha, Leslie, Sydney, any order.
Um, I think, let's see, Fiona mentioned part of what I wanted to say. Definitely, it just, I really appreciated the fact that I felt valued, being on the team, even if it was like an extension of the team. They made me feel like family, and I was, just super excited to just be there, helping them advance or whatever. But the other thing, I think, Michelle, you mentioned this or reiterated this earlier, but, no matter the experience, like good or bad, even if it was like one of the worst experiences ever, there's always something that you can take away from that experience that will, get you like in a better direction, or just, make you grateful for that experience and the fact that you did learn something, even though when you were in the thick of it, just, it was like terrible. So definitely like taking, little like leaflets or different like grains of things and, putting them to later use.
Thank you.
I feel very, I feel like everything that I've always believed in and lived and breathed around my own sports is very much affirmed right now, and it feels good. In a way, it's like tells me, oh, I'm doing. I might be on the right path towards what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling, and it's really great to hear about the different experiences around like different sports, and whether or not you were the manager or you dabbled in this and that, it's always great for me to like really hear about experiences, and just reaffirms the strong values I have in believing in sports in general.
Thank you.
I I'll admit I was super intimidated about this discussion beforehand, because I was like, I know nothing about sports. And I'm so terrible. I mean, like, I don't like, now I don't play any sports and I don't really watch sports. I mean, my son he's about to be 3 next Sunday. So we are wanting to get like him started like soccer or something, just to like kind of burn energy, or just, and get him involved. But so for me, it really has just been, there's a lot that I've learned today. Like, there were like names mentioned that I never even heard of. So it's been really great and lovely. It's like really inspiring listening to you. And like, I learned a lot from you, and like, you really normalized a lot of the things, like women playing basketball. So it's been really cool, and like just really empowering and great to hear. So I guess I'll take all that away, and I like felt comfortable. And so thanks for that. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. I think for myself, this has been a great conversation as always, but there were three words that I wrote down that I'll take away from today. And one was knowledge, and just understanding what it means to be a part of sports. And that, as the ladies have said, try something once anytime, don't feel that you have to win, things like that. And just knowing that women do have a place at this table. I think that's important. And, that representation is important, which was my second word. And finally, investing, like so many things, it's up to us. And if it's not up to us individually, as a village, making sure that our young women of color are invested in and pushed forward to be a part of this arena. And if it's not as a player on a winning team, a championship team, behind the scenes on the sideline, not sidelines, but taking the timekeeper, the scorekeeper, the in the offices, the trainers. You've seen so many of them. If you love sports and you want it, but you feel I can't play it, but there's other things you can do within it. So just don't be afraid to try it. So with that said, I just want to thank everyone for participating today. Keisha, Sydney, who is returning to host next month, and Leslie, thank you so much. We hope to hear more from you, and join us on some future talks. We'd love to have you. This was a great discussion. And just a reminder, um, if you have any questions for us, or think of something later, you can email infoshadesmagazine@gmail.com, or DM us at any of our social media accounts. And that goes for if you have ideas for future topics, or articles or focuses that we can do, support us in that way, sharing your thoughts and ideas with us. A final reminder that today's discussion was recorded and will be uploaded for viewing and sharing beginning Tuesday. Additionally, the opinions, viewpoints, and or personal endorsements expressed in any published print, audio, or video content are those of the individuals only and do not necessarily represent the views of Shades Magazine or Women in Periodical Publishing, Exceptional Women in Publishing. And now I want to turn it over to Sydney, because she always ends it, and I think this is a, a great, I guess, little piece to end our real talks all the time with a quote. And I'd like to turn that over to her. But real quick, just a reminder to keep the families of the victims in Atlanta and the entire API community, in our thoughts and in our prayers, and that we can find a solution and find, not just with that community, but all communities of color, that we can find a way to stop the hate that is circling around us. Sydney.
Thanks, Michelle. So this quote is actually from an unknown person. which I hate to find, but these quotes are so good sometimes I just have to go with it. So this quote says, "Be the woman who fixes another woman's crown without telling the world it was crooked." So I thought that was really good for Women's History Month, and this discussion today. Just let's support each other. So yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Everyone have a great weekend and stay tuned. Follow us on our social medias and you'll know what we're doing next month. And hopefully you'll join us. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks everyone.